sir. Okay, well, great to see you all here. Welcome to Sedra's 2026 AGM. I can hear myself in speakers, but that's really no good to anyone if you can't hear me. Okay, thumbs up, thank you. Appreciate that. The first item on our agenda this evening is what we call internally our business meeting. That means we have organization business to do. So we're doing things like motions to approve minutes. We have a financial report. We have a couple of special motions to make. We're going to do a board election. And then before you know it, we're at the fun stuff. And the fun stuff is our town hall, which we're aiming to start somewhere about 7 o'clock. We're going to have councillors Matlow and Chernos Lynn here speaking. And we have a featured speaker, a special guest this evening, journalist John Lawrence. He's going to have a talk as well, and then he's going to moderate a panel discussion with the councillors. And there's room for all of you in that too, for Q&A. John's got a few interesting questions to ask them already. So we're hoping for a free-flowing, interesting discussion that will keep you entertained and bring you back next year. With that said, everyone who's a registered member got one of these on the way in. That's how you vote. That's the show of members' hands when we're doing votes on the business items of the agenda. Now, let's see. I think we still have a couple of people coming in, and our treasurer is right at the back, but he's heard me talk about him, so he knows it won't be long. The first item on the agenda now is to call Reverend John Joseph forward to do the land acknowledgement. John Joseph is the minister here and part of our gracious hosting team. Thank you, John Joseph, for your hospitality, and please go ahead.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. It's an honor to be here and celebrate Sedra. You may or may not remember me. In 1887-88, I was working in the deli at the Dominion at Yonge and Eglinton. How many people went to the deli? Do you remember that? I served you. There you go. We all start somewhere. As we gather this day, we acknowledge that the sacred land on which each of us lives has been and continues to be home to Indigenous peoples for many thousands of years. They have sought to walk gently on this land, and they offered assistance to the first European travelers to this territory and shared their knowledge for survival in what was at times a harsh climate. We seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one based in honor and deep respect. And we strive to make this meeting and all gatherings a safe space for people of all abilities and orientations and gender identities, racialized persons, and all other who are marginalized and have been excluded and harmed by society. So let it be.
Thank you. Thank you, John Joseph. That was lovely. With that, I'd like to introduce our board members who are still spread around a little bit. Folks, if you could just stick your hand up if you're standing or pop up if you're seated. First of all, closest to me, so he gets called first. There's our treasurer, Paul Newbigging, long-serving. Thank you, Paul. Long-suffering, yeah. The chair of our tall and mid-rise committee, watching everything that's popping up and going high, Jeff Latto. My day-to-day partner is co-president, Jane Oster. And who's next? I saw Al somewhere. Well, Al, you're standing. So if it's built lower, but looking for a variance, and we have issues. Al Keevy's our guy. In the back, I don't want to forget her. Sue's save the best for last. You met her at the door, Mary Turcott. She's our communications director. And then Sue Simon, our membership director and secretary. So they are the current board. We will all be resigning in a little while, but no worries. We all want to come back, but we need your vote to do that. So stay tuned for that. I want to acknowledge a few other people. Sharon Moore, who's our Heritage Chair. She's not a board member, but she spends a lot of time at board meetings, and she's also long-serving, and we appreciate all she's done for the much beleaguered issue of heritage in this city. Thank you, Sharon. Diana White. Diana is so we call people like Sharon and Diana super volunteers because they're not board members, but they do a lot for us and so for the community by extension. And we want to acknowledge their contribution. Diana is a former Quora board member in the Quantum Towers right across from Eglinton Station on Yonge. And you may know them as the Minto, if you know that term. Remember that name. And so when Quora wound down, Diana came over, and she's been helping us with events and all kinds of things, and we're delighted to have her. And there's one other person I want to acknowledge, and that's Charles Isco, former board member and our first super volunteer. I'm not sure if Charles is here this evening, but he's a longtime photographer and archivist for us, and we thank him for that. So we've gone over what's yet to come. The first order of business of the business side of things is approval of the minutes from our last AGM. And we've put those on our website. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to see them, but there's been a package up there. I see some heads nodding. Great. Always happy to see that. So with that in mind, I call for a motion to approve the minutes of the last Sedra AGM. Moved by Shelley Laskin, and was that a seconder I saw over there, sir? Oh, great, all right. Could you tell Sue your name, please? Great, super, all right. Are there any questions about the minutes before I move the vote? None? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Anybody want to have a little fun with me? No, good, okay. That passes, thank you. Our financial reports were part of that package as well. And to tell us more about them, I'll have our treasurer, Paul Newbigin, come up to the mic, please. Make a few comments about balances. All yours, Paul.
Thanks, John. Yeah. Is that better? Yes. Yeah, that's good. As you're all probably aware, Sarah is a volunteer organization. We run, we exist, we do the things we do based upon membership and donations that we receive. So to begin with, thank you very much for being members. Thank you very much for renewing your memberships. And I appeal to you, if you see it clear, to be able to give us a donation. We would really, really appreciate that. How do we operate financially? All matters come before the board once a month. So the board reviews the financial statements once a month. And board approval at that particular time. Any expenditures that are made with board approval and have to be countersigned by 2 directors before payment is made. Now, to that end, we run 3 accounts. The first account is our general account, and those are on the website that you can have a look at. And basically, those things cover the things that we need to operate here. It covers tonight's honorarium to the church. It covers the emails and various communications that we put out. It is how we can operate. So again, they're on the financial statements. The current balance in that particular account is $19,196.24. So when you look at things, $19,000 is not a lot of money. When we look at things on a yearly basis, what's coming in goes out. We exist on that gray spot in between. So your memberships are super important to us. We also run another account called our legal account, and basically we've been building up a little bit of a war chest, although recently that has not increased. We're looking at some $12,031.82 legal account. In the event that we are necessary to turn for legal advice to a professional, we have some funds to do that. But as you can appreciate with what legal costs are today and what planners' costs are, etc., that $12,000 isn't going to go very far. But that's what we have to bank on if we need to. The other thing is we have something called the Brownlow account. This slides back to 15 years ago. There was some new development happening on Brownlow. The residents of that area got together and they put together a little bit of a war chest. We spent that money. Really, we were not successful in defeating the development. It went ahead, but we got some changes, some street level changes and things along that line at that particular time. So that left us with a balance sitting in that account of some $5,446.20. I want to come back to that account shortly, please. John, we'll address that. But that's the financial statements as we're moving forward. And John, I'll turn it over to you at this point.
All right. Paul. So with that covered by Paul, I should probably do this again. With that covered by Paul, may I have a motion to approve the financial reports? All right, right here. Could you tell Sue your name, please? And I saw more hands go up. Who wants a second? There we go. If you could trot over for a moment. Thank you. Were there any questions about the financials? Yes.
Hi, sorry, I didn't have a chance to review in advance, but I just wanted to ask you in terms of the revenues that you do get from membership every year, how much approximately?
Well, those revenues run anywhere from $9,000 to $12,000. You're welcome.
Anyone else? Any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, we'll proceed with the vote in the same way. Yellow cards, all in favor. And any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you. While Paul's up here, we have a special motion. Do you want to introduce it?
Well, we have two, John.
We have the auditor and yeah. Okay, all right. Sure, yeah. All right, thanks, Paul, if you don't mind hanging around a little longer. One of the things that's provided for not-for-profit organizations like ours in Ontario legislation under which we are incorporated is the ability to waive an audit. You've heard the numbers. You can imagine what an audit would cost. It's a pretty simple bit of bookkeeping that we do. And so under the ONCA rules, the provincial rules, we ask our members to waive an audit on an annual basis. Not a good use of our money and your money in our view. So given that, I call for a motion to waive audit. Let's see. Oh, I see a card. Yes. Can we get your name for Sue, please, sir? And a seconder? Oh, Jane was first this time. Jane's been itching. Okay. Does anyone have a question about that? Seeing none. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. We also have another special resolution. Paul mentioned the Brownlow Fund. You may have a note of Brownlow sign in your basement like I do from 15 years ago. But that fight's been fought, and Paul is very scrupulous about this and reminds us that those funds were allocated for a specific purpose, and we are not to touch them. But from time to time, we wonder if we needed, what would we do? Well, this is the perfect opportunity to ask you, our members, to allow us to roll that into our general fund. Have I covered that well?
I think so.
Okay. Do you have anything you want to say further about it? Or?
Just to say that when that fund was set up, it was envisioned to help that particular project. And we had said to the people who contributed, if you want your money back, please come and see us. In 15 years, we've had no one come and see us. So at this point in time, and as a matter of fact, we're not even sure who they would be at this point. So it seems ridiculous to us that there is some $5,000 sitting there that we could move into our general funds and allow the board to be able to participate in more things. As you know, we're very restricted in the funds. We've shared that with you. But another $5,000 would allow us to take advantage of some of the opportunities that come along with us, to get involved in some things that would definitely benefit the Sedra community. So I would encourage you to vote yes to allow us to do that, and we can move forward from there. John?
Okay, thanks, Paul. So I propose a motion, a call for a motion to close the Brownlow account and roll it over into the general funds. Yes.
There's a lot of development going on in Brownlow. I live there myself.
Yeah.
And there's forthcoming development also. So would that money be used for problems there, or is that?
Absolutely. Anywhere we need to. We need a little more flexibility in our view, but we're very active on Brownlow. Jane talks to Mitch, the developer there, every week. We've got a solid relationship. But it's not to take funds away from Brownlow. It's to take the restriction of only Brownlow off of them, because we feel restricted in even going a block over to the area, or just down the block to the Eglinton School, to the things that front on Eglinton or Mount Pleasant. And there's large towers planned for there, and a redevelopment of Eglinton School that Shelley's nodding about. So we just want to take the restriction off, but absolutely, if there's a problem we need legal advice on regarding anything on Brownlow, that's what we'll do, for sure. Sound good? Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none. May I have a motion to roll the Brownlow funds into the general fund? Someone? Okay, we have one. Oh, is Sue moving around? Yes. Got to flex a little. Thank you, Paul. And Jane's already jumped into second. All right. Thank you, Jane. All in favor? And opposed? Okay, seeing none, that carries. Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul. Do a tidy bit of business in these annual meetings. Okay, now we come to the big one, which is the board election. So all of the current board members are standing for re-election, and you met them earlier if you were here, closer to the start of the meeting. I will introduce them by name again. We plan to continue in our current roles, and if there are any changes, that'll be decided at the next board meeting, and we'll publish that on our website and in an email that you, as members, no doubt are signed up for. So the nominees, as part of the protocol, the board, all board members have resigned as of this moment at this meeting, and that's in order to stand for re-election. So the nominees are Jane Oster, Paul Newbigging, Sue Simon, Al Keevy, Mary Turcott, Jeff Latto, and myself, John Hiddema. May I have a motion to approve the election of the full slate of directors as presented for the 2026 Sedra Board? I saw Shelley and, yes. Yeah, okay. Sue, do you have it? Okay, thank you. All right. Any questions about the motion? Seeing none. All in favor? Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, that passes. Now I have to make my pitch, my annual pitch, that we hope that some of tonight's attendees will consider getting more involved with Sedra's activities. If there's something you're passionate about, we can help you. We're all volunteers, so there's a bandwidth question, but you won't be going it alone. We're an experienced board. We get a lot of things done. We know a lot of people. So we have leverage in those terms. And as you heard earlier, we have 3 super volunteers, and we have a handful of others as well. We've got people that monitor areas, like there's someone monitoring the area around Merton and Yonge for the construction going on there. So we've got eyes on the street, which we love, because we get to hear about little problems before they're big problems. We've got green initiatives. We've got several other things. People safety, I call it. It's not traffic safety. I care about the people. And of course, we're doing a lot about development, about parks, and all of that. But if there's something you're interested in that you think would fit in what Sedra does in the community, let's talk. We have a process for that. It requires that you have been a paid member for the past year and that you be nominated by someone who's been a paid member for at least that long. And then we usually bring people in. This is how we got started with Diana, for example. Talked about what her interests were and what she could see doing within our organization, and she's doing more and more. For which we're very grateful. Thank you, Diana. And that sort of thing we would like to do more of, and we welcome your interest if you've got something you want to do. It's definitely not a case of you suggested it, so you've got to do it, because you've got help from all of us as well, and you've got the leverage of our relationships. So that's my pitch for that one. And we can take nominations at any time. We can, at any point that people become available, we're happy to talk to them. So, nice. We got caught up. I hate breaking up the mixing and mingling, but at some point we have to start. And so that is all the business we have for the business portion of the meeting. Thank you for attending it. Thank you for your support, and thank you for being members. We appreciate that. And the town hall, I think we'll just roll right into it. So we'll start there with a few remarks from me about how the year's gone. We'll bring Jeff Latto up to tell you about everything that's going on. And I see Mary Turcotte coming up to help run the slides and switch the PowerPoint. Thank you. I saw Councillor Chernos Lynn. Hi, Rachel, nice to see you. And I don't know if Josh is here yet, but I'm sure he's on his way. Got a reliable text. Okay. Very soon. Well, if he's not here soon enough, Rachel goes first. Simple as that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have journalist John Lawrence, who's going to speak about some of the kinds of issues that we're all commonly talking about as well. He's got a lot of experience in those areas, and I'll tell you more when I introduce him properly. And then he's going to sit down for a chat with the councillors, as I mentioned. So we hope to have a freewheeling discussion of interest to all of you, and John will try to bring all of you in if you've got questions or comments as well. So stay tuned for that part. Last formality is a motion to adjourn the AGM. May I have a motion to adjourn, please? You, sir. All right, Sue will want to get your name. Oh, and Jane jumped to second already. There we go. All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Don't want any more business, neither do I this year. Okay, we are formally adjourned for the business portion, and it's time for the town hall. Let me turn the page. President's remarks is what I'm told is next on the script. So great to have you here, and we at Sedra have had another active year. It is not quite as active on the development front. The market has had something to say about that to the development community, and that's been reflected in the number of new applications we've seen. We're also seeing a switch toward more rental buildings. Oh, it's Arthur. Okay. Yeah. Mid-rise or bust. Yeah. So we are seeing a switch to more rentals, and that means that the companies building them are long-term investors. They're around for the long haul. They're not just flipping condos to whoever is lucky or foolish, I'm not sure which, enough to buy them. And we see that as a solid thing for the community. If you look at the Davisville buildings over the years, that was family investment, and they were there for decades, and they were interested in keeping the buildings well run and in good shape, and we want to see more of that. So we're seeing more rentals. We're seeing more family-sized units, at least 2 bedrooms, maybe 2 plus den, 3 bedrooms in their offerings. They're looking at the market. They're not foolish people, and they're seeing what the needs are and what the interests are, and they're starting to build toward that. We're also working to ensure new developments incorporate grocery stores, because we've had the forehead-smacking conversations about how the Davisville apartment neighborhood may turn into a food desert. The Sobeys there is a development site. It's not happening yet, but when it does, there'll be no grocery store in that entire apartment neighborhood, which is ludicrous. There's a lot of people there with mobility challenges. There are a lot more seniors, and we need an accessible, walkable grocery store. That's Sobeys, by the way. Interesting little fact that the developer told me years ago. That Sobeys is the highest revenue per square foot grocery store in the country. We need a grocery store. So good news is that a lot of people know this as the old LCBO site, Yonge and Davisville. It's been a parking lot for a while. It's owned by the Times Group. We're meeting with them in 2 days to see what their current plans are, because demolition's underway. Part of that project is a grocery store, and a fairly large one, on the mezzanine, something like the Loblaws on Eglinton, if you're familiar with that. So we're going to have a real grocery store close by again, and we're very pleased about that. Development proposals also lead to more need for green spaces. You may have heard the term tower in the park, and if you remember the historical Davisville buildings, that some of them are still in this situation, there was a tower and there was a big green space with it. There were agreements that made that work, and they're all expiring. They were 50-year agreements. So now we're getting a tower and a tower in most cases. But Councillor Matlow and us and many residents are pushing hard and having some success in getting parks and green spaces in that neighborhood. And we are getting dedicated parkland. So behind 33 Davisville, fronting onto Beloyal, is a nice large green space that everybody that I know, and me too, think of as a park, but it's not. It's private land over a parking garage, and that's getting a tower, unfortunately. But we are getting some parkland on that site, and we're getting some across the road as well. So, and it's dedicated parkland in all of those cases. So there may be a little less square footage, so to speak, but it's firmly locked in as parkland that the city controls the way it always should have been. And so we see that as a stake in the ground and, in a sense, an improvement in the reality where those towers are getting built. If we can lock that in and the city will have it in perpetuity, okay. We're happy enough. Let's call it that. We're happy enough about that. We're also on the board, Sedra's on the board, and by that I mean Jane. Thank you, Jane, of a group called the Midtown Ravine Group. They're continuing their work on a massive project, multi-million dollars. They're getting into a fundraising campaign for that. They've got some city funding from Councillor Matlow and Councillor Sachs. This is, if you've been on the west side of the cemetery, sort of gone down the hill and found an opening to a trail that doesn't look that good. Near the Deer Park School, which is up the hill from there, that runs all the way. If you go down Mount Pleasant, the very bottom of the ravine, that's where it reaches. And so there is a large project plan to make that a functional, usable trail. We see so many of Sedra's residents using the cemetery as green space. I used to take my son biking there when he was little all the time. And, so we see that Vale of Avoca, the extension, the trail that then connects into the brickworks as part of the larger network of green space for our residents too. And so we've been supporting that, and Jane sits on the board on our behalf. Thank you, Jane. Stay tuned for more on that. Growth also puts a lot of pressure on sidewalks in the neighborhood, and one of the things that we've been working on for years is mid-block connections. So look at a map of Manhattan, look at the block size, and then look at the block size of the Davisville apartment neighborhood. It's huge. But one of the things we've been working on with the councillor's office, with city planning for years and years, since the time of Andy Gort as president here, is mid-block connections. So you'll be able in future as well to walk through the neighborhood, take the path from Belsize to Millwood, take the path along Davisville School, outside the fence please, and cross Davisville, and there will be, even though there's development coming, a connection right there that the city has an easement on, and that means it can never be closed to the public. It'll always be there. And so you don't have to go to Yonge Street to go south. You can walk through. People safety, big issue this year. We've been working hard on it, and I'm sure Councillor Matlow will have something to say about it. Very pleased that there's a project in the works to improve safety on Davisville. And with that, I'll wrap up and call Jeff forward. There he is, patiently waiting.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you for giving me my job back. Appreciate it very much. Okay, this is a familiar site. This is a map of course, the Sedra community. And it shows the colors of the land use as per the City of Toronto official plan. I presented this last year and the year before, and I hope to keep using it as a way to illustrate where development is happening in our community. Yellow, of course, is primarily single-family homes. Orange, it looks orange, are apartment neighborhoods. Red is mixed use, and green, of course, is parks and open spaces. Now, I apologize for the screen being so small. It's going to be hard to see. Layered on top of this is new legislation that came out last year titled Major Transit Station Areas, or MTSAs. This legislation responds to the province's wish to focus intensification around significant transit hubs. For our community, that means Davisville, Yonge Eglinton, Mount Pleasant, and Leaside subway stations. Around these 4 points, the legislation speaks to zones within 200 meters, that's the dark blue you're seeing on the screen, or 500 meters, the light blue. These two areas need to be read in cohort with the previous land use colors. For instance, in the red and orange land use areas, a property in a dark blue zone will be permitted 30 stories as of right. So no extended planning application whatsoever. And if you're in a light blue zone, also you have to be in a red and orange land use area. You're permitted 20 stories as of right. In the yellow land use area, that's primarily, again, single-family homes. A property in the dark blue zone, if on a main street, such as Mount Pleasant, would be allowed to build a 6-story apartment. In the light blue zone, that permission drops down to 4 stories. All other areas remain largely unchanged. Now, the city is currently working on revised zoning, which is responding to this legislation. That zoning will speak to very specific matters around density, massing, parking, other issues of that nature. More will be said about this tonight by our guest speaker, John Lawrence. But we just wanted you to have a visual sense of where this legislation applies in our neighborhood. A side note, talking about 30 stories as of right as a permission pales a little bit in our community where we see quite typically applications coming in at 40 stories minimum.
High Street.
Yeah. This of course shows park space in our neighborhood. Dark green is existing parks and parkettes. Light green are school grounds. Dark green outlines are the proposed parks and new parks. Since presenting this to you last year, we've had no new green spaces planned, but there are some coming, hopefully, in this year's applications. Next, we want to talk about pedestrian connections. John mentioned that in his opening address. So here you're seeing existing laneways and through-block connections in red, and any new proposed pedestrian connections are illustrated in orange. We have a new one, and this year I brought a laser. You'll be pleased. We have a new one. We have a new one, C4, right up there, which is associated with a new development at 245 Eglinton East at Mount Pleasant. Now comes all the development. So this is an outline of the tall and mid-rise built form within our community. A lot of it is existing, so where you see a black outline, that's an existing development. Proposed is in gray, and anything that's in black is currently in construction. You can see how the development pattern fits with our land use designations, and it'll be very interesting to see how the new MTSA legislation either impacts development patterns or perhaps just reinforces existing patterns. We do have 2 new developments this year. I mentioned it already. One up here at the corner of Mount Pleasant and Eglinton, 245 Eglinton East. That is 2 towers of 60 and 65 stories. We have another development that actually John mentioned in his address, down here, this red patch right here, on Davisville, which sits between 55 and 77 Davisville. That's a 30-story development. So of the 39 projects that are coming on board that are listed on the slide, 20 are seeking approval, so they're currently in application status. 11 are in construction, and 8 are approved but are not being built due to market conditions, labor shortage, the cost of lending capital. In speaking to developers, we've heard all 3 of those reasons for not going ahead. When this is all built, we will have a community, our current community of 26,000 neighbors, approximately, will be increasing to about 43,000. And so, what will that look like? This is an image provided by Stephen Valesco, an urban planner who provides 3D modeling of applications. And this is showing a view of Midtown Toronto. You can see the cemetery in the foreground. Everything in gray is existing. Everything in pink is an active application. Anything in blue is active construction. It's a little out of date. A couple of projects aren't being represented, but by and large, this is the image of a future Midtown Toronto. That is my update for this year, but I welcome any questions, and I do want to make sure we have enough time to move on to our guest speaker. Yes?
I just wanted to know if you were aware that the section on Brownlow, which includes the remaining townhouses and the Usapanki Bank, next year the person that owns all the rental properties will be bringing down those townhouses. And I don't know whether it involves the bank or not, but definitely all those townhouses are coming down in a year. And that is based on, I was involved in a Zoom meeting with the 3 developers.
Right.
Because I live on Brownlow.
Right. Jane is putting up her hand. Jane, you want to speak to this? Oh. Oh, actually, we do have a mic. Hold on a minute. Sure? There's a mic right there.
I'll be the handheld runner. Okay, where's that question?
Okay, I was just asking if he was aware that the Brownlow has a further development that is going to be happening within a year. The remaining townhouses on Brownlow are due to be brought down. I don't know whether it involves the bank or not, but the developer who likes rentals all along there and on Redpath will be putting up a rental unit, and probably it will be mid-rise, since that's what he seems to like. No? 30 or 40? Okay, well,
I can tell you a bit more about it's Mitch Abrahams from Maryland Capital, and he is the one who developed 83 Redpath, which is a condo, but he normally does rentals, and he did the one that he owns 18 Bravo, which is an existing older rental, and he's doing 2 Bravo at the moment. And he did 71 Redpath, which is an existing 21 story. So the other one, number 2 Bravo, will be 26. And then, yes, he's bought up the townhouses on the west side of Brownlow. And so once he's finished, they're to the north of 18 Bravo. And once he's finished with number 2 Brownlow, he'll consider doing the other one, but he may pause because there's quite a bit of development on the east side of Brownlow. Mankey's is currently involved in putting up 2 towers on the east side of Brownlow. One of them is going to go up first so that the residents of, and I believe you live there.
yes, and it's not going to be rentals that they're putting up, not condos.
Condos.
No, you're wrong.
Has he converted to rental?
Yes.
Okay.
According to the meeting that happened within the last 2 months with the developers, they said they were going to rentals.
Good.
And that's really not a surprise.
That's better
We're
news.
seeing
If they
that.
would add an affordable component, it would be even better. Which is something that all of these new rental developments should require, in my opinion. But
Still going to honor the fact that they'll be
Correct. Right. So what they're doing is they're building 2 towers, and they are going to move the residents of 55 Brownlow into the first tower that they built. So that's Menkes. But then at the corner of Sudan and Brownlow is Quadrille. And the Quadrille site will probably be the last one that's developed. But that whole area is quite intense. And it's all being replaced by high-rise. But keep an eye on the Mitch Abrahams, on the one that you were talking about, just south of Eglinton, because I believe he has suggested that he's going to be lowering the height, which is very unusual for developers.
And the other thing is, based on the same meeting with the developers, the one right behind Britton House, they're saying they're not going to be building on that for 8 or 9 years.
Oh yeah, that's the Quadrille site, and that's going to be the last one built in that area. But right now, Menkes is using the Quadrille site for its staging.
And also for the...
This is all very micro. Sorry, guys. I'm kind of into the weeds with this, so I must apologize, but I just know this area. No way. We happen to have the area planner sitting right here, Patrick Miller, and this is his turf.
No doxing the planner. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. Thank you, Sue. I was going to say that the last newsletter also, there was a summary of the MTSA impact to our community, which included a number of these images. So again, apologies for the small screen tonight. Yes, there was another question.
I just wanted to ask about the towers that are going up on Yonge Street, just north of Davisville, where all the lovely vegetable stores used to be.
Yes.
And I talked to one of the people working there, and he gave me some statement about the size, and I don't know whether it's true or not. Are they really going to be 60 stories high?
Correct. I thought that they were at one time around the mid-50s, but I believe it's been updated to higher than that. That's the meeting that John mentioned in his update on Thursday. We're going to be meeting with the developer, the Times Group, and understand what their application is going to be about. That application has been revised a number of times throughout the years, and it's difficult to keep track, but I believe now it's over 50 for sure.
Well, what this fellow said was that he thought there was going to be two towers,
Correct.
140 and 160.
Yeah, probably the 60, of course, would be the one closest to Davisville, and it would step down towards Millwood. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd just like to mention that the counselor's office will be represented there, and if they want more, we want more. So we'll see what we can get.
And when John says more, he's not talking about height. Community benefits.
I'm just wondering if we can do anything about the design of those buildings in terms of decreasing wind tunnel. Because if you come along Mount Pleasant and you turn onto Yonge Street, you can sometimes get blown away.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely, yeah.
Controlling the wind tunnel effect, I think, is going to be important.
Yeah, it's an issue that comes up with every project now, and the City of Toronto has standards, design standards that respond to that. And we know that when we get involved with an application and we talk to a city planner about it, they are quite aware about wind impact issues. It's becoming a new building type, if you will, for our neighborhood, where we have to start treating it like a downtown. Two more? Okay, yeah.
Is there any update on the sites that are on Manor Road, just east of Yonge Street on the north side of Manor? There's a development that's supposed to go on in between Manor and Hillsdale.
Correct.
And then also, is there any update on the development that's, I guess, essentially where the Oli is and Telus Drive? Can you update us about those?
Okay, so the first project we were quite actively involved with. A little side story, we did a little demonstration to show the developer and city planning and city urban design that the same density could be achieved not in a 29-story tower, but in a 15-story mid-rise. And we wanted the city to take this on as a way of preserving, to some degree, the scale of Yonge Street, rather than having Yonge Street as a canyon from Eglinton to Davisville. We felt it was important from a built form perspective that it changed from high density at Yonge and Eglinton to mid density at Yonge Street at the most. Unfortunately, and we were quite taken aback by this was not taken on as a principle by the city in their position. We considered going to the Ontario Lands Tribunal to fight because we felt that we needed to make sure that there was a mid-rise built form along Yonge Street. It was a very difficult time for us because we knew that going to the Ontario Lands Tribunal would have involved significant resources to get planners on board, lawyers on board, engineers on board. And our strategy was to try and get the city to take the bulk of the opposition so that we wouldn't have to drain our resources to achieve success. Unfortunately, that did not happen. So what is planned there on Yonge Street between Manor and Hillsdale is a podium of about 8 stories and a 21-story tower on top for a total height of 29 stories. The second site, I'm sorry, I've lost track, is yeah. Correct. Yeah, thank you, Jane. We do seek victories wherever we can, and preserving that one structure was definitely one of them. And I'm sorry, the second site? So, for instance, that one was 11 stories. That was approved with townhomes on the backside. With this new legislation, the MTSA legislation, that property would now be permitted 20 stories as of right. So I suspect, as Jane is saying, they're probably reconsidering their application. Okay?
We have, I think, one more question.
I was just wondering if you can speak to the disconnect between the two statements approved for 30 stories and the applications that come in that are always at least 56 stories.
Right. So thank you for that question. I should have made it more clear, but the principle, as I understand it, and I don't want to speak for the City of Toronto, I'm merely interpreting the legislation as I've read it. A developer will be allowed 30 stories as of right, which means they don't, it's a shortened approval process. They don't have to apply for a rezoning. They don't need to apply for an official plan amendment. It's effectively gives them a green light. They still will do community consultation. They still will need to follow the Planning Act and community engagement, but the application is greatly simplified. The developer, however, will always have the option to go beyond that, but it will require that they then seek those additional approvals, which can extend the application process by a number of years. So we believe the legislation is not necessarily targeted to our community, where we already see 40-story plus applications. Giving someone a 30-story as of right is meaningless. It's probably going to be more impactful for areas along the Danforth where there are transit hubs, where currently the development environment is low-rise, mid-rise. It's effectively spreading the density throughout the city away from the traditional 5 growth centers, Young Eglinton being one of them. So that's how we understand it. The city will come back with detailed zoning this spring, and we'll be able to speak more specifically to it, I think, next year.
We've got to
Free.
keep it.
The fruit stands along Young, north of Davisville. At least one of them has been provided with a relocation site within that area. So that's good news.
Okay.
And the others on Mount Pleasant
Yeah, that's right.
at Eglinton. Yeah, for now. Building happening there too.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Super. Thank you, Jeff. Yes, very much. I want to add one tiny thing, which is when Jeff talked about that mid-rise for the site that we don't like at all between Manor and Hillsdale. Jeff's an architect, so he wasn't pulling anything out of thin air. It was professionally done. I can't say the same for the developer. And I'll leave it at that. Now we move on to a few more guests. First of all, I'd like to recognize Shelley Laskin, our trustee. A little birdie told me Shelley's running again, and you're not? No? Okay, well, we find the situation appalling. We find the idea that we can be told we cannot deal with an elected representative to be antithetical to everything about democratic principles. And I want to, yes. I want to acknowledge Shelley. She and I have known each other a long time, done a lot of things together, and that's just a small slice of the enormous work Shelley's done for the community, and I want to recognize that and thank you, Shelley. Okay, standing patiently at the side, a very busy man, as we all know. Our counselors are busier than ever, so we will get on with it. We all know him. We all love him. Josh Matlow.
I love you too, John. Well, hi, everyone. It's good to see you this evening. And I want to hello. And I want to begin actually from where John just left off. I want to pick that up because I wanted to say a couple of words of acknowledgement about our school trustee, Shelley Laskin. Shelley's decided not to run again, and she gave me permission to say that. And I've lived in the Davisville neighborhood for nearly 2 decades. And this is where we've raised our daughter Molly, who's been through the public education system. So Shelley is our family school trustee. And Shelley has been the kind of person who has dedicated her time, her energy, her passion to public education and her love of this community. There are things that we all know that she's done, advocating for us at the school board, often being a lonely voice of reason on certain debates. But also in our community, we've worked very closely together to renew and redesign and improve our local school playgrounds, and worked very closely together on saving the Hodgson Ice Rink, working closely together early on in different phases to see the redevelopment of North Toronto Collegiate Institute, the new and improved Davisville Junior Public School, and so many other efforts that without Shelley would not have happened. She's been very present for our community, very focused on our community, and has been just this rock that I really appreciate. And I just want to say on behalf of our entire community, speaking of love, we love you, we value you, and we appreciate everything that you've done for us. Thank you, Shelley. couple of small things that I wanted to mention to you before I get into a bit of an update on various matters. One is our Environment Day is going to be at the North Toronto Memorial Centre well, when I say our, I mean the Toronto St. Paul's one. I know that Rachel will hold one as well. At the North Toronto Festival with the local Midtown Young BIA. And I'm very happy to tell you that we are doing it again because it was such a success. So mark your calendars. The afternoon and evening of June 20th, we are taking over Yonge Street. It's turning back into Little Brazil. And come out and enjoy the festivity. It is so much fun to see that vibrancy right in the heart of our community, and I hope that you will join us for that celebration when we all become Brazilian. So I want to tell you about a few policy issues that are impacting our city and our community, and often there's no separation from the two. So I won't get into, I know that Jeff did a wonderful overview of a number of issues that are affected by the new PMTSA policy from Doug Ford, but I can tell you that one of the challenges with this policy, along with many of the other planning pieces of legislation that Doug Ford has pushed through, has been that they have been in many ways very arbitrary. And while we are absolutely in the midst of a housing crisis, and we need more housing units produced in this city, to simply just draw circles around places and say, you know, sky's the limit within 800 meters, and still not ensuring that we have adequate school capacity and infrastructure and social services and park space, and often even removing the ability to get park space and community benefits, which Doug Ford has done, is not good planning. And I'm just so tired of this, I think, unintelligent debate that our society has between should we have housing and affordable housing, and should everyone, those who live here today and those who will live here tomorrow, should they have a great quality of life? Good planning ensures that all of that is done together. That's why we fought to get the Midtown in Focus plan achieved. That's good planning. And we should continue advocating for those goals. So I moved a motion to council asking the chief planner to come back to us with a policy that will respond thoughtfully to the MTSA requirements, and we will see what that entails. But again, this should not be, and don't ever let anyone tell you that you're either sort of pro-housing or anti-housing because you want nuanced, thoughtful, good planning. This shouldn't be about NIMBY or YIMBY. It should be about doing it well. And if you do it well, then I think there's more acceptance for change. My approach to the development that is approved either at council or in many cases at the appointed unelected Ontario Lands Tribunal is that our focus has to be on the quality of life of community and affordability. So the Hillsdale development, for example, one of the things that we fought for is more retail replacement at grade rather than just see a long soulless glass block of one big store or two big stores. And we were able to achieve 4 through negotiation, but that wasn't good enough. I believe that the province should give the city the ability to prescribe that we are able to retain fine-grained small retail on our main streets. It's critical that we don't kill these main streets by having just big banks and Shoppers Drug Marts. There's a place for all those, and we want those. But we also want the bakeries and the shops and the restaurants and the cafes, and also a diversity of different options to be able to choose from so that you can have a livable, walkable community, and you don't need to hop in your car and go somewhere else to do your shopping. That's good planning. So that's something I hope you'll support me on as we advocate for that. I'm also asking the city to come up with a better way to ensure that, well, you may have read that the condo market's kind of kaput these days. So, well, there's been many areas of our Midtown community, along with other parts of the city, where developers have acquired a whole bunch of properties and then they fall derelict. Look at Yonge and St. Clair, for example, just south of us. And they just sit there for ages. And So, do you see at Yonge and St. Clair, we worked with the developer to use that site as a racquetball court for a while, right? Now exactly. Then MPAC, the provincial property value assessment agency, decided to charge them an arm and a leg because all of a sudden they were raising revenue off that site, even though that's exactly what we want them to do, to keep that animated rather than just a dead block. So I'm asking the city to work on whether it be a subclass for the property tax or some creative way so that if we are going to have a struggling condo market for a while, and if we're going to see these properties fall into disrepair, I'd rather see a really realistic and creative way to animate these spaces rather than just see them fall into derelict states of disrepair or just demolition, and then they just turn into sort of dead space for years. So these are the kind of things that you don't read about in the paper so much. Some of you do, but ultimately these are, I think, thoughtful issues that need to be addressed as we're dealing with pragmatically as we're dealing with the reality of the market. Also, ensuring that, for example, the Al Green parquet, as you may remember, on Beloyal, even when the law's not on our side, and as you know, even though that it acts like a public park, it's actually private property, even when the law doesn't ensure that we have new parks, we went ahead and we actually negotiated with the developers across the street to make sure that if that was going to be redeveloped, that we get a new, bigger, real park for the Davisville Village community, along with the one that we're going to get at Paleton and Beloyal as well. So the reality of the work that my office, and by the way, I just want to acknowledge Sebastian Gibson, who's my planning advisor at my office. I imagine many of you, if not all of you, have had a conversation with Sebastian at one point or another. Even when the law is not on our side, we do everything we can through negotiation, through looking for points of leverage, whatever we can do, to ensure that we find ways to get more retail, more parks, childcare. We've actually been successful on the north side of Sudan to have a long, contiguous park space, the Green Line. Now we're expanding Raccoon Park. I apologize to those of you who don't like raccoons. It was a playful name. And we're going to continue working on all those ways to make sure that we keep expanding the services that our community relies on. I want to bring a few things to your attention too. Bill 98, you may not have heard about this. It's called Building Homes and Improving Transportation Infrastructure Act. Another one of those, Ford names of like everything's great, but we're actually going to do something to screw you bills. And to be candid. And what the Ford government now is doing, you know how they took over the school boards and they took over most powers from the conservation authorities, and they've been going from one place to another, basically overriding basic democratic powers. Now they want to do it to the TTC. So how has Metrolinx worked out for us? Right? I've got issues with the TTC too. I sit on it and I'm there and I'm advocating for issues such as improving maintenance and capital repairs so that we don't have those constant delays, and safety and reliability, like real things that the TTC needs to be improved for. But at the very least, whether you like the TTC or you've got problems with it, you have counselors, you've got commissioners, you've got a board that you can go speak to. There's direct accountability and there's local decisions being made about bus routes and really making sure that everything's working locally. If the Ford government moves forward with this, they will be able to set the fares of the TTC, which means that it could get more expensive. They could use the TTC as a cash cow to pay for other underachieving transit agencies in the region. And ultimately, without control of the budget, TDSB knows this well, then you don't actually control the service standards. You don't control really anything. You can't actually have a thoughtful discussion about improving safety, improving reliability, if you don't know even how much money you've got to invest in it. So it's another thing that this government intends to break. And I encourage you to learn more about Bill 98 and raise your voice because we need it at this time. Speaking of which, Billy Bishop Airport. Yeah, yes, that's one way to put it. I recognize that some of you may be allured by the idea of an airport expansion at Billy Bishop because of the dream of being able to fly to Vienna for a weekend from Toronto Island. Wouldn't that be lovely? That being said, though, as attractive as that promise might be, like every big dream, there are realities to face when you are making big announcements. The Ford government has already announced that they are removing the City of Toronto from the tripartite agreement. They are expropriating city lands, including the Toronto Islands themselves, along with the parts of the waterfront neighborhood at Bathurst Quay, including Little Norway Park, where I was just playing softball the other day. And they're doing all of this, rushing ahead, without a single plan in front of anybody to see. So here's some things that I think that we should be asking about. If that moves forward, how large will the runway have to be? Well, the Port Authority themselves have acknowledged that it will most likely have to expand about 900 meters, which is longer than the height of the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. So in other words, we'd be seeing much of our lakefront paved over. There'd have to be a massive blast wall built in our lake. That'd be lovely to look at it from the harbor. There's already traffic and congestion problems in the core, as you all know, and there is no plan to adequately address that. They may be taking some of the park space and turn it into parking lots. They haven't said. They've said that there's still going to be a park there. They just didn't say how big it would be. They also haven't considered their very own housing targets. They keep telling us we're in the midst of a housing crisis. Well, the Portland neighborhood is supposed to be where we're actually going to be building a new neighborhood to provide more homes for more people. Well, the number of homes that would be built there would be drastically removed if the flight path has to be lower to accommodate the jacks. In other words, there's real things to think about. Like, believe it or not, Doug Ford, there are real consequences for big decisions. And I encourage you all, whether you consider yourself left-wing or right-wing or any of the political labels, competence is important in government. Competence, honesty, and maybe a little less corruption. And to just sort of announce this without any actual real answers to any of these real, honest, serious questions is not only irresponsible. The way that he's been treating Toronto is not like a partner. It's like a bully, and we have to keep fighting back. We should not be letting go of our efforts to revitalize and repurpose the Science Center into a place with public purpose again. We shouldn't be letting go of holding the government to account for turning the Ontario Place into a big Austrian spa. And I encourage you, no matter who knocks at your door during the mayoral election, ask them what they're going to do to fight for Toronto. And don't vote for anyone who doesn't have a good answer or a good track record. I digress. One day, maybe. Speaking of which, our work continues on advocating for a city charter. We have an active working group. The report's going to come out this year. And I'm working with a group of really thoughtful, engaged, wonderful citizens who believe that cities in Canada should have constitutional rights to actually make local decisions to advance local priorities rather than wake up every day and find out what the Premier has decided to do with us. So we're going to continue advocating for dealing with the root issues. I brought a motion recently with the support of my colleagues to move forward with what I named Toward a Beautiful City. And the idea of this is that, I love Toronto, I'm proud of Toronto, but I'm not always proud of what I see in Toronto. We've often reached, historically, for the height of mediocrity when it comes to public spaces. Not enough green, a lot of concrete. not enough attention to design. And even on our day-to-day walks throughout the city, we see garbage cans broken and overflowing. We see a number of infrastructure that needs improvement, litter, graffiti, etc. And we can do better. And it's always about choices. It's always about where our priorities are. And I just fundamentally believe that any one of us, when you move into a home, you treat it in a way that makes you happy. Your mental health, your well-being. You design it in a way that you wake up every day and you're happy to be there. Our city should be treated no less. And I want Toronto to be the most beautiful city we can imagine. That's how I feel about my own home, and that's how I feel about our neighborhood. And that's what I want for our city. And I can tell you, I brought it to council, and most every one of my colleagues felt fully invested in that goal and shared the same values. So I'm really excited about moving forward with that initiative. I'm going to whip through a few other ones. Have you noticed how the Davisville Aquatic Center is now rising from the ground? Isn't that incredible? And by the way, and I want to thank, John and I, started this years ago, working with some other parents and local residents. And it feels so good to see this literally rising from the ground. And very soon, we're going to have a new community center, the first one really in Toronto, St. Paul's, where we're all going to be able to go and get some exercise and be together. Not only are we going to have that pool, but we're also going to have programming space for seniors, for families, everyone in between. So that's exciting to see. Canada Square, Jeff, did Jeff cover that? Okay. Just the latest update is that there isn't much of an update. There's still negotiating going on, but we are still not satisfied with the amount of community use space that the developer is providing. And so we are still working out a lot of those details before it's ready to move forward. But our priority is great public realm and a lot of community use space at the base of the buildings to ensure that we have more amenities for the neighborhood. You mentioned the grocery stores. I want to thank, and Sebastian played a big role in this too. When the Times Group decided to move forward with the demolition of their site at Yonge and Davisville, we reached out to the greengrocers. In many ways, like we did with Mabel's Fables, where we have these special places. Like Mabel's Fables, we worked with Eleanor there because we wanted to ensure that if she was going to be displaced, that she could continue this incredible institution, this iconic children's bookstore in Davisville. And similarly, the greengrocers, they're not bookstores, but they're like the best place to get really affordable produce in our neighborhood. And they mean something to us, and that's why we reached out to them and made sure that they would find homes in the nearby area. And so these are the kind of little things that I do, that my staff do so well. And can we just hear it for Sebastian, who really kind of made sure it happened? So. As I know John mentioned to you earlier, we initiated a project called Improving Davisville, meaning Davisville Avenue itself. This was an idea that we began long ago, but it definitely was accelerated by the near tragedy when a mom and her child were hit by a car near June Rollins Park and at Acacia. And so we went ahead and did some temporary interventions. You will see that there's more bump outs and bollards. We did the same treatment right at the entry of the school at the crosswalk at the PXO to make sure that we pinched the curb lane. Because the challenge that we found was that even though crosswalks, formerly known as PXOs, the ones with the yellow lights, are considered like really good safety interventions, they work better when there's two lanes. Because when there's more than two lanes, the driver that might be in the through lane will sometimes try to whip around the car in front, and they don't see a pedestrian crossing. That's what happened to that mom and that child. So we made sure that we kind of literally gave the nip and tuck right there in front of the school. And now we're going through a process of public engagement to do a permanent redesign of Davisville. The other reason we're doing this is that it's tired. You know, like even the old safety measures, some of the bump outs are crumbling, the bollards are bent and broken, the bricks are falling apart. So it's time to actually put Davisville back together as a beautiful street. So we're still getting feedback, we're still hearing from the public, but pretty soon we will have a plan that we can move forward with, might be in stages, to improve Davisville. So I just want to give you kind of the heads up that that is coming. And I just want to make sure that I covered kind of the main things here. There's so much, there's so much that we work on. And I guess I'll wrap it up to just say, I know this is a difficult time, not just in our community, but around the world. And a lot of people are going through a lot these days. It has never been more expensive to live in Canada, in Ontario, in our city these days. And there are a lot of people who are going through a lot of stress. No more so than people who are living on our streets. And, you know, I know that all of us are kind of rallying together to find ways to make sure that everybody gets the care that they need. But one of the things that I love about this community, and I just want to say this on a sentimental note, is that we've faced a lot of challenges and we've also had a lot of wonderful celebrations together. But one of the things that I love about this community, my home for the last 2 decades, is that this is the kind of community that rallies around each other and supports each other, that we fight the things that we need to fight, we fight for the good things, and ultimately, it's a community that I'm really proud of, and I'm really proud to work with Sedra, John and Jane and the entire board, Sarah, all of you. You love this community, and we are always at the table together, and I'm really grateful for the family that we have. Thank you. Great question. Well, you regular people, we are all regular people. You know, for those of you who don't get my e-newsletter, if you go to joshmatlow.ca, you can just put your email address in there, and then roughly every month, we send out updates both on sort of policy issues, local issues, but also where there are efforts. You're going to get, like, we're going to be organizing right now a letter writing campaign to save our waterfront. So there's lots of different issues that we are advocating for, and whenever we have something to share, we pop it out through there. You can see it on my social media. If you can also, you know, filter through, you know, the odd dad joke and various things that I write on Twitter. But we're constantly putting stuff out there, and yeah, I would love your support. You also are always welcome to, like, if you follow the council agendas, you may not be aware of this, but any resident is allowed to come and make a 5-minute deputation to any committee. So if there are issues that maybe I didn't tell you about, but you find something that's important to you, you have a right to come and speak directly to the councillors and to the mayor and make your voice heard. And I encourage that. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh, and thanks for all you do. I can imagine there might be an appetite for more questions for Josh, but we're going to have the panel discussion. He's not going anywhere yet. And she knows what's happening. Rachel Chernos-Lynn is coming up because she's next. Please welcome Rachel. Great to have you. I think we're going to have to
take this. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, John, and great to be here with Josh and with all of you tonight. For those of you who have not met me before, my name is Rachel Chernos-Lynn, and I'm the councillor for Ward 15, Don Valley West, and I was elected about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years ago come November. And before that, I was the local trustee was Ward 11 and Don Valley West, same ward, and that was for about 6 years, and chair of TDSB for the last 2. And so I was a colleague of Shelley's, and I hadn't put it together that Shelley. Well, I knew Shelley was going to be here, but I'm used to speaking, actually, at Sedra with Shelley. And for many years when I was the TDSB trustee, we used to do this meeting together. And Shelley would always do a slideshow. And she'd say, you're going to do these slides, I'll do these slides. And we'd kind of work on it together. But she was generally, I will say, the brains behind that. And so I didn't really think through, wow, I'm going to take a few minutes to just thank Shelley publicly, which I do plan to do at another date. But this community has really been so fortunate to have Shelley as their representative. And I say that knowing because I worked alongside her and also had her as a mentor. And I think her leaving is only easier for me because I left first. If I had to leave after, it would have been really, really tough because she was the best colleague you could imagine, always someone willing to lend a hand and mentor other trustees, help other trustees. Even if she didn't agree with the motion that you were doing, she would help you make it better. And she has left her handprints on so many things at the TDSB, so many that I don't even know about, but so many that I do know about, including many policy pieces, so many school renewals, some of which she did work on for sure with Josh, but with many others, and many that she helped other people with. I know when I came on, Hodgson was kind of in the works. And Shelley, you really walked me through all the different things I had to do to keep everybody on their toes about Hodgson. And I learned a tremendous amount. And now, when you talk about seeing the aquatic center rising up, I drive by Hodgson every couple of days and I see it coming to fruition. And I don't know if Shelley and I will be invited to the opening of that because we're in such a weird place with the province, but Shelley should be at the opening of Hodgson because it was at one point in her ward, she was a huge champion of that school renewal and the growth project there, and certainly worked alongside me on that even when it was no longer technically in her ward. But I would also say some really important things that Shelley worked on. She was a tireless advocate to have vice principals in our schools. And for any of you who ever had children at a small school in the TDSB, many of them didn't have vice principals, or if they did, they sometimes lost one, got it back. She was always fighting for more vice principals, and that is a huge piece in keeping a school running efficiently and having more adults in the building. So huge pieces. And I would also say a huge champion of school pools, and that is a big piece in this part of the city. We don't have school pools everywhere in the city, but you do in this part of the city. And I think there's been more than one occasion where we've almost lost pools, and Shelley was key in ensuring that we still had them. So I would just say that her retirement, you've left a huge mark, Shelley, on the TDSB. But what she also leaves is there's going to be a huge lack, there really won't be anyone with that kind of historical knowledge that she has. There's so much up in her head, and also just an unbelievable knowledge of governance. And even though the governance of the role of trustees is changing, I think they will be much poorer off to not have you there. Okay, so I just think one more time we should thank Shelley. And I really wish I had enlisted her for a slideshow tonight to go with my remarks, but you'll just hear me talk instead of a slideshow. Okay, so today I'm joined, I've got Parker, who's in the red shirt at the back, the tall gentleman there. Many of you will deal with him if you write to us about policy or planning issues. He's my senior advisor of policy and planning. And I also have, I think I'm not sure if he's still here. Is Wilmar still here? Oh, there he is. On the other side, I've got Wilmar Courtlever. And if any of you ever email us about traffic or snow clearing, I know that's a big issue in Davisville, Wilmar is often your guy. And so I'm lucky to have these two with me, and they make up two of several staff in my team at City Hall, and I have a very, very strong team. So, and happy to have them with me. So as I said, it's been about a year and a half since I've been representing Don Valley West. And I've worked on a wide variety of issues. And while Josh has talked a lot about the big issues and some of the smaller ones in his ward, I'm going to stick a little bit closer to home and talk about a couple of key items that we've really been focused on in Ward 15. So development, obviously, has been a major focus of Ward 11 in the last 2 years. And it's probably one of the things I hear about most from constituents when they write to me. I think all of you are really familiar with the pace at which development is moving, although I know it has slowed somewhat, but the applications are still coming in. And certainly the pace at which we've seen development in Toronto in the last couple of years has been quite staggering. Recent decisions, like we heard Jeff Latto talk about earlier around the major transit station areas, that the province mandated exponential growth really around transit. And the suite of expanding housing options in neighborhoods, you sometimes hear City of Toronto staff talk about EHON. These policies have really significantly changed the context of planning and development in the South Eglinton-Davisville area. And we certainly saw that from the slides that John Hidima showed us. I won't go into the details of all of this because I think it's really been covered by Jeff Latto. But I do want to just let you know that as a lot of the changes are happening, city staff is monitoring this, and particularly the rollout, so that we can make potential improvements and refinements as this happens. And not always so much around the height of the buildings, but things like you will know that in 2023, the city, this was before my time, but the city brought in multiplex as of right across the city. As part of that, and as part of all of the EHON initiatives, we do get monitoring reports back with updates. And a number of these updates, for example, around multiplex permissions, that came most recently were informed by things that actually happened in Ward 15. So, for example, you'll see that on multiplexes, they no longer allow things like rooftop patios, driveways that go underground with multiple levels of parking, stacked parking, reverse slope, those kind of things. And those came from specific examples in actually Ward 15 where those were tried, and then staff started to put in some parameters around it. So it's these type of monitoring is always trying to ensure that we're doing better and making it better. And we're seeing similar monitoring programs for all EHON initiatives, so things like garden suites, lane weight suites, and major streets. And while there is consensus, surely at all levels of government, that we need more housing, it is important, and something that my office is really focused on, is that these densification initiatives come with amenities and infrastructure that support healthy communities, and that's something obviously that Sedra is really focused on. Things like parks, libraries, schools, transit, these are all vital components of complete communities, and that's really where we're focused. Unfortunately, some of the tools that the city has or used to have to secure all of these pieces and all of these improvements through development, they have been undercut by the province in recent years. Things like changes to community benefits, Section 37 money, and the development charge framework have reduced the city's ability to negotiate for benefits and to secure funding for improvements to local infrastructure and amenities needed to accommodate this added growth. And that is a challenge. I do see so many of the things that Josh was able to get in your ward in years past, I do think it is becoming harder because we don't have the level of Section 37 money coming in now because the province has changed that format. So these are some of the challenges of the context in which we're working in. And I would say another one is that there's reduced report back timelines that have restricted the city's ability to respond to applications. And these give the applicants earlier opportunities to take their projects to the Ontario Land Tribunal. So we see stuff moving to the OLT very quickly, and we have much less control once things actually go to the OLT. And so that's really why I feel it's so important that we engage with the process through all of the avenues available to us, through community consultations, working alongside our organizations like Sedra, working with staff, and negotiating with applicants to come to the best possible solutions for our communities. And so I just want to say to all of you, if you have any questions or concerns or feedback on these or any other issues in the city, do reach out to my office, reach out to me. I take all of your input with me to City Hall and to Council, and it informs my approach and my decision-making when things come forward. But the comments that you bring me do find their way into motions that I bring to City Council, and it is based on that feedback that we get. So for example, I have done a number of motions in the past 2 years that have really been based on the things that we've experienced in the ward and that constituents have brought to us. I would say one of those big examples has been around the tree canopy in Don Valley West and Ward 15. And the strengthening of tree protections. So, as you all, of course, know, trees play a really vital role in maintaining Toronto's environmental health. Their ecosystem services, air cleaning, shade, stormwater management, retention, actually have a dollar value. They were valued at $55 million in our last tree canopy study in 2018. I'm sure it's worth more now. And Don Valley West actually has, for those of you who don't realize it, some of the most extensive tree canopy coverage in the entire city. Upwards of 40% of the ward area is actually tree canopy, and a lot of that is in the ravine, but a lot of that is also on private property. So those trees that are on people's properties, that is a massive amount of Toronto's tree canopy. And so that's part of why those protections really become so important when you think about it on that private land. And many of you may have read about in the press some incidents that happened in Ward 15 where developers illegally removed trees, sometimes under the cover of the night, literally like between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. recently, quite shockingly. And this is in blatant contravention of our tree bylaws. So I have worked with staff and the community to develop a number of motions on the subject, and many of these were reflected in the city's most recent tree bylaw update. So things like advocating for the province to establish the tree bylaw as applicable law, which would open up avenues to permit-based enforcement. So for example, you take down a tree that you're not allowed to, maybe you don't get a building permit. Seems like a logical thing, right? To most people, they think, you know, you took down that tree that was in the way. How can we possibly be allowing you to have a building permit? Well, we're not actually allowed technically to stop that. So we've been advocating to the province, and I will say that Stephanie Bowman, who shares a lot of Ward 15 with us, has also been advocating to the province on this. She's our MPP for Don Valley West. Although I know in the Davisville part, we have slightly different, does she? Yeah, it is slightly, it's Leslie, no, it's Stephanie Smythe here. Okay, it's very confusing because I have three. my ward is a bit funny that way. But another thing that came through in that tree bylaw was establishing a trunk diameter to determine bylaw protection, as opposed to the current system, which you measure at breast height. So if the tree's been cut down, you no longer have the ability to check it because the trunk wasn't the measurement that they would go by. So this now allows staff to determine whether a tree bylaw is protected even after it's been cut down. And they're also reviewing the fine frameworks, as well as a number of other things. So this is just one of the many examples of issues raised in the community that I then take to council. But some other items include ensuring that there's accessibility in the right-of-way. We had a number of incidents in our ward where the right-of-way was, like the sidewalk was not available because there was tree pruning work, let's say, being done, or other construction on a local site. And there was no way to block off for someone who might be vision impaired that they couldn't see. So we've got new restrictions in there. And I actually was very happy to see this in place. I forgot to tell my staff, but I've noticed it in place the last couple of weeks that I've been out and about. So we're seeing things like that. In addition, enhancing consideration of stormwater management at the Committee of Adjustment. This is becoming increasingly important with climate change and the variety of huge storms we've been having. And then addressing pressing local traffic and congestion issues through direct intervention. So speaking of traffic and congestion, that is probably the second most common inquiry we get, either around traffic safety or around congestion. And certainly one of the main things I heard at the door when I was canvassing last time around. And it is one of the city's top priorities. Recently, we received our first report from the new Chief Congestion Officer, and while it is still early days for this role, I would encourage people to go back and look through his first report. In Davisville, we've seen some improvements in the last year, and in the interest of time, I won't go into all of these, but I did want to highlight that both Bayview Avenue and Mount Pleasant Road underwent signal optimization last year. So every year the city picks a couple of streets, and those two streets were picked this past year. Data indicates that this has resulted in some improvements to traffic flow, but congestion still does remain a major issue. And the city continues to look for new solutions, such as smart signals, the addition of more smart signals, to further improve the movement of traffic in this area and across Toronto. And I did want to let you know, in case you're not aware, we do have two independent what we call ISPs. These are going to be intersections where they're not for cars to stop traffic, but it's a new traffic light that's going in at Sudan and Bayview where the crosswalk has been. It's actually going to be a light, but it can only be activated by a pedestrian or a cyclist. And the second one is going at the entrance to the cemetery down at Sutherland and Bayview. Again, just for pedestrians. So it's not an additional traffic light to have cars. So you don't have to worry that there's going to be more cars infiltrating your neighborhood. It's really meant to ensure that people can cross the street safely. And these were based on places where we'd actually had accidents and things like that. So this is good news, and they are coming in the next couple of months. So you're going to start to see construction around those. So with that, I would just like to say thank you very much for coming this evening. Thank you to Sedra for having me. It is always a pleasure to work with Sedra, and I am looking forward to continuing that relationship in the coming months and years. Thank you.
So far, these are for you and John. Give me 1 sec while I raise this again. Josh, come on and join us. John, this is your moment. John has told us that he would prefer to have the dialogue more than to make a presentation. So we will go straight to that. And I just want to introduce John Lawrence. He's a journalist. He's an editor. He writes about cities, planning, local history, business, climate change. You'll see his byline regularly in the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, Spacey Magazine, Corporate Knights. And he's also, he just loves writing, obviously, because he's also an author of 5 books. And he's been a co-editor of some of Coach House Toronto-focused Utopia series, including the title of one that I think will resonate with all of us, which is Messy Cities, Why We Can't Plan Everything. John's given a lot of time and effort and thought to the many issues around these themes that we've all been focused on, and we thought he would be an ideal person to lead a discussion. So he's going to have some questions for our 2 counselors and get things flowing, so straight to John. John Lawrence.
Well, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you very much for the introduction and the invitation. And you know, in my business, getting to talk to and ask politicians questions is always a great, you know, it's a great moment. I'm going to ask both of you to do the unthinkable, which is to try to be succinct so we can get lots of questions in, and also open the floor to questions from the audience. So just very briefly, I actually live around St. Clair and Bathurst. I grew up in Lawrence Park. My grandmother lived at 33 Davisville, so we were back and forth to her apartment quite frequently. She had an uncanny ability to press all of my mother's buttons, and so when my mother would leave, she would drive back on Davisville, and this is in the pre-traffic calming days. So my mother would often get speeding tickets because she was so worked up, and the traffic calming was like a cop with a radar gun. So anyway, so I'm a little familiar with this stretch. So I wanted to kind of run some questions by both of you, some for each of you and then some for both of you. So I'll start with a lightning round. And so the first question is for Councillor Matlow. Are you going to run for mayor in this election cycle? Yes or no?
No.
No, okay. Okay, a question for Councillor Chernos-Lynn. You are former TDSB chair, you're former trustee, the mayor is a former trustee, Shelley Carroll is a former trustee, Paula Fletcher is a former trustee. There are others on council. Is this council going to do anything to fight back against the cuts to the trustees and the school board between now and the election?
So, great question. We did do a motion. I actually did a motion. I think it wasn't this past month, but the month before, requesting that the province do consultation before they changed the governance. We heard that they were they might change the governance structure, so I think the motion was worded something like, should you decide to change the governance structure, we think it would be wise to consult with stakeholders first, including parents and education stakeholders. And I think about a week later, they changed the governance structure. So that was, you can tell how much they care about what Toronto thinks. So that was really, and it was unanimous, I believe. I don't think anyone, I don't even think Councillor Holliday objected, and he objects to almost everything. So I believe it was unanimous.
No props?
Yeah, and I had no props. But people spoke really passionately, because it is surprising, but it's a very large number of councillors who got their start in education. But certainly we work with, I mean, every councillor has, even though the trustees, you know, the city's not exactly responsible for schools, we serve the same families and we work with trustees. And I certainly worked with the former councillor Jay Robinson regularly when I was a trustee. So the relationships are quite developed and we rely on trustees and their expertise. So it is very, very concerning. So there is an appetite to fight back, but we have a very long list of things to fight back on with the province. So it's one of many.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about housing, which is a topic of great concern. Before I ask this question of you guys, could anyone put up their hand who has a family member, a young person in their family who is stressed in their housing circumstances? Yeah, okay. So here's my question. We have this framework, the MTSA, which John has talked about, and it has a very modest provision for affordable housing, a 5% time-limited provision through the inclusionary zoning. And you know, many people have said that one of the benefits of clustering housing around transit stops is that it relieves people of having the expense of a car and so on. And so what I wanted to ask both of you is, what else should the city be doing to improve affordability for you know, your children and grandchildren, my children, your children, in this city, which has become very unaffordable. On top of what council is already doing, Councillor Matlow, you start.
I would argue that there isn't one tool or magical solution to addressing the housing affordability crisis. It's an entire toolbox, and it should all be done. There are people who are not in poverty, but they are often referred to as the missing middle, who need more options in our communities to be able to afford a unit or a home, for that matter, that may not be the cheapest place you can get, but certainly not what the average house goes for these days. And there needs to be an openness to change the way we've always done it, because frankly, we're living in a world where many of our kids cannot afford to live in the neighborhood that they grew up in, let alone people who are moving to our city. And I think that we should be having far more debates over, the word character not being a euphemism for keeping people out, but actually the character of our communities, talking about design, materiality, making our actually reflecting what we value in our neighborhoods rather than who should or shouldn't be living in our communities. And I think we need to be open to those changes in a way that works. We also need to have more units that are below market. We need units that are rent geared to income. We need a shelter system that has proper capacity and an environment that people feel safe in. We need pathways to permanent housing, often with wraparound services. I'm going right across the spectrum of people who need shelter in one way, shape, or form. But ultimately, and I also think that there needs to be, even when there's rezoning, there needs to be realistic policy that actually allows a builder to meet a feasible pro forma to be able to actually accommodate that the construction. All in all, real estate has become effectively a financial asset for a lot of people. And for the average homeowner, it's your path to retirement. But for some corporations and speculative investors, they're really just commodities. And they're trading them in a way that they just want to see the value increased and keeping everybody else out. That has to stop. So there's a lot of things, and the city can't control all of that, but at every level of government, everyone needs to do their part. But I can tell you, and just to make this point again, where we can build new neighborhoods and allow for reasonable density where it belongs, like the Portlands, when Doug Ford talks about housing, but then just announces policies that actually are going to cut the number of units being built there, that's hypocrisy, and it doesn't make anything more affordable. And if we actually, and I would also add that while we focus on better affordable housing opportunities, we have to have policies. I think we'll have less of a fight over supporting new housing and not if people know that the social services, amenities, and parks are there to support that new density. If not, I think that's the root of why some people push back.
Councillor Curtis-Lynn.
I would agree with Josh, and I would also add that I think there is a role for the city to play in some of that housing, and we have seen that in the last few years with more of an investment in the city getting involved in actually building some of that housing. So looking for opportunities to build more co-op housing, something that hasn't been done a tremendous amount in recent decades, but was quite popular at one time. Those units, people love them, and we do need a variety of different forms in order to keep things affordable. I would say one of the challenges, like in getting to that missing middle that everybody keeps talking about, when we look at some of, at least what I've seen in my ward that's supposed to be the missing middle, some of the rents that are being asked for are like $3,200, $3,500 a month. That's really massive commitment if you factor that into a year for young people to be paying. So I think there's a lot more to be done. We also need to be pushing the province on this. The City of Toronto had inclusionary zoning that was asking for, I think it was 20%. That has been weakened down to a possible 5%, particularly in transit-oriented communities. So I know in Ward 15, we have a transit-oriented community coming to Thorncliffe Park in around when the Ontario line is built. So there's going to be significant new housing there, but how do we ensure that a good portion of that is affordable housing? And one of my big concerns, and we've been really working on this in Thorncliffe, is that if we don't have affordable housing in a significant way there, then you're going to have a community of haves on one side of the Ontario line, just to the north of it, because that's where the transit-oriented community is going to be built. And then to the south of it, in the horseshoe of Thorncliffe Park, we're going to have a community in really aging infrastructure, living in buildings that are not being reinvested in, and there's already significant challenge there. So I think there's a lot more to be done on this.
May I just add one quick thing? Because I also, for those of you who are renters as well, we have to address this government should be either significantly reforming or abolishing above the guideline rent increases and replacing it with a 10% capital reserve to improve the maintenance of buildings. Rent control should be brought back for buildings built after 2018. Doug Ford tried to remove it for those built after 2018, and there should be significant reforms to even how we build some of the city projects, so that some of them are partnered with the private sector, but also some should be public builder, and we should just move ahead and build some of these.
So let me ask you both about some missing middle aspects. For those of you who don't know, I write a lot about the real estate industry for the Globe and Mail. And I've been covering the emergence of the missing middle multiplex industry. And it's gained a lot more momentum, I think, than some skeptics thought. I did a piece that came out in the Globe a couple of weeks ago. Since 2023, which is not that long ago, the city has approved 4,880 units of multiplex housing through something like 2,629 building permits, which is, it's not nothing. And, some of that is just adding on to an existing project. And so the question I have is this. There is some evidence that some of these projects are, run into roadblocks because of the Committee of Adjustment, which is what triggered the review of the Committee of Adjustment. And so when you look at your respective wards, how do you think about the presence of multiplexes and missing middles? And I'll just say one more thing. On the way over here, I drove, because it's hard to get east-west. So I live in an area with lots of small or older apartment buildings. I drove along Heath, which has all sorts of interesting older apartment buildings. Oriole Parkway has interesting older apartment buildings. Just, a little bit west of here, there's, Broadview, have those, sort of 30s fourplexes. So there's lots of this form around, and are we gonna allow it to be developed, or are we gonna find ways of objecting to it?
So I would say multiplexes are here. There really isn't much to object to in the sense that they are as of right. I don't see that changing. I don't see any. I think the point is, how do we do them so that they work as well as they can? That's really been how, at least how I've thought about it. I would say that one of the biggest things that I think we should be doing is encouraging that mid-rise development along our main streets. And I think one of the challenges that when we look at some of the variety of forms of housing that we had in the past, they were sometimes on bigger lots. So you might see 2 or 3 lots put together for a small apartment building, and it works really well. I think what some people find jarring with some of the multiplexes that are being built is that they're being built on very thin lots, and so they're tall and thin, and then they're next to another house. I think if we were seeing sort of slightly larger chunks happen along all of our main streets, and we went a little bit higher, to me, that would be, like, I don't know, I didn't grow up, but my first house with my kids was in a brownstone with my first daughter. So we don't have that precedent, at least not in my ward exactly, but I think that's an opportunity to really quickly address if we were to kind of, and I'm starting to see it, I would say, up Bayview as we go further north, where we're getting 6 stories as of right, kind of in the northern part. I will say there is objection to it from residents, but it's as of right. And so we are going to see that growth. Is that the missing middle? I don't know. I don't know that that's the case in some of the higher, like the more expensive neighborhoods, because the land that's being purchased by developers, I don't think necessarily makes it an affordable option. But I think if we were to allow that higher growth that wasn't that exponential height along all of our major streets, which is allowed with the avenues policy, we will eventually see more of this missing middle coming through. So I think it's coming, it just, we're not seeing it in the same way that we might look back 5 years from now.
Okay, let me follow up this question. Sorry?
Multiplexes.
So this is a great question. The question is to define multiplexes. And so multiplexes are, they're basically very small apartments up to 4 units with a rear garden suite or a laneway suite out back. These are permitted on sites that are zoned for detached family homes. And they've been made as of right, which is allowed anywhere in any of the residential zones in the city. That's what a multiplex is. So I'm going to ask you a question, then I'll throw it open to a couple questions from the audience. So so since you mentioned mid-rise, this was an aspiration going back to the original official plan that Paul Bedford wrote 20 years ago. And what happened was that the city and council approved mid-rise guidelines that made it incredibly difficult for builders to build mid-rise buildings. And many of them, and I've interviewed a bunch of people, builders who say this, it's like, it's not worth the trouble, we're just gonna go tall. And there was this unintended consequence. And I know that city council has tried to kind of water that down, but what's the lesson, what's the moral of that story, do you think?
Quite a question. The moral of this story, I alluded to this earlier, John, that even if a site is rezoned or a secondary plan is changed or a policy is reformed, if it's not feasible and realistic to build it, it won't happen. So developers will choose something else. Right. So I was actually speaking to a mid-rise multiplex developer recently about how not only is there a logjam at the Committee of Adjustment, but also even like little things like the building code inspector won't return his calls. And it turns into months and months and months to even sort of deal with like a basic thing. And then he has to think of, how am I gonna make up for this? Maybe I need to build bigger or differently. And if even the processes, and I know that's sort of like a snooze fest when we talk about those things, but they matter, and time is money for these guys. That if these things these processes are improved, it'll mean a lot to them. So the moral of the story is, if you have a policy, make it work.
Any questions from the audience?
Which of you will be seeking re-election to your seats this fall? Did everyone hear that?
So the question is, which of, are either or both of the panelists seeking re-election this fall?
So at this point, I haven't put my name in because I've been in this office for, as I said, like just under 2 years, and I'm really focused right now in just trying to get as much done as I can for the community, and I'll turn my head to the election in the coming weeks and month or two. But I think right now I'm just trying, we have 3 more council meetings and a number of committee meetings, and I'm just really trying to make sure I get as many motions in as I can and as many things checked off that I want to get done for the community before that expires. So that's really what I'm focused on, is just getting the work done.
Yeah, I'm going to give a similar answer to Rachel. But there's a reason that we're doing this. Timing of announcements are really important. And even though I know that there's a lot of interest and excitement about the nominations opening up and the election kind of formally starting, we really do have many months until the actual election, kind of the heart of the election really doesn't begin until after Labor Day. That's kind of when it kind of really gets going. So I feel the same as Rachel. Like right now, I think it's premature to kind of get involved in the election so much, because the moment that you are seen as a candidate, it's harder to actually focus on policy and get motions passed and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I'm answering this way. I know it sounds hedging. It admittedly totally is. But there's a purpose for it too.
Another question? Yes.
I'd like to know what is being done about stupid committees that have been set up who are allowed to interfere with buildings that are that should be just commonly gone through, but they manage to prevent buildings that are as of right, but they stick things when there's a slight adjustment, they reject it, and then nothing gets done.
Is this the Committee of Adjustment that you're talking about? Or
No, I'm talking about citizen little committees that are sitting there and are interfering with buildings or usage of buildings.
Could you give us an example of a committee like that? We're just not clear about exactly.
Yeah, well, for example, if a building that wanted to do the laneway development came and they needed a slight adjustment to have that approved.
They would go to the Committee of Adjustment.
Well, I'm talking about a little committee, local committee that makes recommendations.
Is this a residents association you're talking about?
No, I'm not. This is a city committee, and this is something that I read about.
Do either of you know about this?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? TLAB is the
That's the appeals body. I could.
Committee of Adjustment, if there's a minor variance.
There's a Committee of Adjustment, which are a civically appointed committee, not just from any one local area, they can be from anywhere. And they review what are called minor variances, like you're describing. And that's what John was referring to, in the same spirit, that often there can be a backlog and issues there. But I can tell you, and I imagine I speak for Rachel too, that in our local wards, there's no one committee of local residents that reviews those kind of things. It's not done that way.
And I would also just add that if an application is for something that's as of right, if there aren't any variances, it doesn't go to the committee. It only goes to the committee if someone wants to have a bigger, like a different setback, or was going to be a larger footprint or less. Yeah, so then it has to go to Committee of Adjustment because it's no longer as of right, if that makes sense.
I have a question. Councillor Turnelson, I was so excited to hear you mention the idea of co-op housing in our neighborhood. For me, this is the one way where we can take housing and real estate off the market and just let people live there. So it's not an asset, it's just a place to live. So I have 2 questions and it's the same 2 questions for both of you. For each of you, how many co-op projects are you nurturing and are aware of in your ward, and how could you help for any future co-op projects in your ward?
So I will tell you that I have begun discussions with staff about a co-op project. It's not off the ground or anything like that, but it is something I'm interested in the ward. But these things take time, and it's not a simple process. Josh may have more experience with that, but it is something I'm interested in.
So there's one for you.
It's not even there yet, but it's in its infancy, and
Like
who knows if it will get there or not. But it is something I am interested in exploring, and I have begun some discussions.
At a specific location or just in your ward generally?
Early days.
Okay, got
Early
it.
days.
Yeah. Similarly, we don't, from the councillor's office, we don't prescribe tenure or the type of building. We're not the ones who go and say, this must be a rental, or this must be a condo, or this must be co-op. So we have co-ops in Midtown Toronto that we work really closely with and we support all the time. The federal government has only recently announced that they have a renewed interest in supporting co-op housing, which we love. Certainly at council, that's something that we've been advocating for. But it's not like, I wish it were as simple as like, I have now decreed that there's going to be a co-op building there. It's just not the way it works.
I didn't expect so. It'd be someone like me who's actually interested in doing it, and we want to get the stakeholders together and get
And
it
email
off
us.
But I want to know, what can your office provide or assist with to help with this process for those interested?
Well, the first step is email us, and we'll talk about exactly what you're proposing, and we'll talk about the site that you're proposing it at, and then we'll meet with city staff and we'll engage them, as Rachel mentioned as well, and then we'll look at sort of what we can do to support you, context specific. But I can't tell you, without knowing the details of your proposal, exactly what the next step would be, aside from looking at it honestly with you and seeing what's supportable. But the model of co-op housing is something that we love.
So let me insert a question that I've been curious about. So I've been covering the city for quite a long time, and I'm always kind of taken aback by sometimes by how long it takes to not get something done. And so I wrote a story about this recently. The city kind of started the consultations around pedestrianizing Yonge Street south of College again. And this idea has been kicking around for a decade. I think some of you may remember when the pedestrian wall on Yonge Street. There was a similar project, the John Street Cultural Corridor, which dates back to it dates back to Obama's presidency to really kind of give it and so the question I have for you, and this is, if in the unlikely event that you're both around next term, how do you get the city to actually do things in an expeditious way, right? Because you all vote for something that's an expression of, it's a democratic expression of the will of council, and then it just kind of dies on the vine. And so how do we solve that problem?
Well, I want to say this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm announcing I'm running for mayor, because I'm not. But it does have a lot to do with who the mayor is. Things can either happen or not based on who's in that chair. And I've seen that firsthand. There are a lot of rental reforms and protections for renters that we fought for under the previous two mayors that never happened. The current mayor, because she supported them, it's happening, including remedial action, the color-coded signs, a number of important things that I fought for years. There are other things that, there was an idea, for example, to what's his name? Rodney Chin. Rodney Chin, a resident, came up with this idea to pedestrianize Church Street. And city staff said, no, it can't work. There's no way to do it. Well, we at our committee decided, let's do this. Let's move on it. And we're going to do a pilot this summer, and we're going to be pedestrianizing Church Street. and turning it into the vibrant, remarkable street that it already is ambitious to be. Isn't that exciting? Like every other city in the world, pedestrianized streets are normal, right? Normal. That's why we're also shutting down part of Yonge Street. And yes, there's a way to get around it to have our Araya and Young, our Brazilian festival. There are ways to keep moving on these things. So I guess to summarize, there are times for like lots of working groups and discussions and all that. But there are some things that are just so, it's worked around the world. We know that it's amazing. Let's just go and do it. And at the very least, try it. And 9 times out of 10, you'll find out that things didn't break. And things that didn't work out well, you learn from and you improve on, but you keep progressing. So just keep moving on things. And,
I just want to jump in and say that the city has permanently sort of closed one street in the city, which is Market Lane.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yeah, that's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, but like you guys are at the wheel.
Yeah. There have been motions from yours truly and others to look at these kind of ideas for a long time, and it really depends on the leadership. I do believe that we are in a mode right now where there are more risks being taken, there are more chances being tried, and what we're going to find, like, I moved a motion on introducing more food options into some of our larger parks, and along with Rachel supported it, seconded the motion, and we're moving on things that we just have seen around the world, not only working but celebrated, and I do think that we have an opportunity now to move forward with it, but it really depends on the mayor, and unfortunately, like to say it really candidly, Rob Ford didn't care about this stuff. He wouldn't pedestrianize a street if the street was thrown at him. He just wouldn't do it. John Tory was incredibly cautious about these kind of things. I wish he was more cautious about the FIFA contract. And we're in a mode now where, listen, I don't agree with everything that Olivia Chow does, and we have debates on different issues, but there are some things that I'm really happy that we're doing under her mayoralty, and I think that the pedestrian, I think that's going to pass, maybe not unanimously, but overwhelmingly when it comes to council.
So I have a separate question for Councillor Chernislin. So this is, I'll take one more question from the audience. So there's been a lot of media attention on home invasions, on the theft of luxury vehicles. So I have this example. I do not own a luxury vehicle, but strangely enough, across the street, I noticed a car that had been parked with a guy in it, like around the clock, and all the neighbors were chatting. And one day I saw a cop, and I said, "Well, what about this guy?" He said, "Oh, this is so common. There are all these private security firms that are hired by, residents groups or people on streets to basically keep watch of, on cars or somehow get a beat on home invasions." So, is that the Toronto Police Service not doing its job, or is it like what is the remedy to this particular problem? Because it seems like that hiring security people is like a symptom of something else. So what do you think about that?
So as this has become more common throughout parts of the city, I have parts of my ward where people have hired private security and parts where they haven't. And there's sometimes a worry that the parts that haven't are getting hit more by the organized crime groups that are doing these kind of thefts, where you don't have it. We don't actually know if that's true or not. I don't think it is. I don't think it's something that the police aren't doing per se. I think it's that the police are pulled in a number of different directions, and They are now focusing their energy very much on doing as many nighttime patrols in areas where we've had this, and they have recently had quite a bit of success. So there is something called Operation Aegis that they've been working on, particularly down through Ward 15, down through Rosedale, where they are really watching very closely and getting people with both plainclothes officers, like unmarked cars and marked cars, working on this. This is a real challenge. We have seen, certainly all levels of government have a responsibility here. And when all levels of government put their head together 2 years ago and formed a task force on auto theft, we saw the numbers go way down. Theft in general, and home invasions, is down. There has been a blip in the early part of this year, and that's what Operation Aegis is responding to. I worry that about sometimes people think they need these extra levels of security in their neighborhoods. And that it's a bit of some of the fear that people have. Then I don't want to minimize what any family has gone through if they've had a home invasion, because the difference between a break and enter and a home invasion is that somebody's home. If it's a home invasion, it's when people are actually home when someone's broken in, and there's sort of the threat of violence or potentially violence actually as part of that theft. If that happens to you, it is a traumatic experience. If that happens to one of your neighbors, it is completely normal to feel like you might need extra protection. But I also think we have spent, as a city council, it has been a focus to make sure that we are putting money into policing. We have a 5-year hiring plan. We're just finishing year 2 of that. Over 100 officers a year. It's going to be over 500 officers over 5 years. So it is a big influx. And I would say the other piece of it is that right now, this year, they're focusing on the supervisor level. So making sure that there is strong oversight, which I think the recent reports indicate that we need. So, do we need this? People may feel like they do need this, but ultimately I do think the police are responding accordingly. I've done 2 recent safety meetings. I did one for Lawrence Park, one for Leaside, and I will say, I think I forgot to mention it when I spoke before, I have a town hall coming up on the 14th of May, and we have the police coming again along with the chief congestion officer. So it's a topic that's on everybody's mind. I'll be honest, I've rambled on so long, I'm not sure I even remember what your question was, John. I apologize. I hope I answered it, but Josh can
I just want to add a couple of points. I think it's fair to say there is no division in the entire city that has done more on auto theft and home invasions than 53 Division. Yeah. They literally have been leading the charge. And I've personally done press conferences and worked closely with the chief of police on this and brought motions to City Council to address it, working along with the Insurance Bureau of Canada, who have had remarkable recommendations looking at every level of government. There's a lot that the police do that you're not meant to see, because as Rachel mentioned, a lot of the surveillance and the work that they do in our neighborhoods are in unmarked cars, they're plainclothes, they literally don't want the criminals, frankly, to see that they're there. Moreover, we are advocating toward the federal government to do more to improve screening for what's leaving the country, not just what comes into the country. The province can do more on ensuring that it's harder to rev-in, meaning identity theft, of not only the entire car, but also the parts that are often taken into different pieces, put onto into a shipping container and sent overseas from the Port of Montreal. And the local police need support from OPP, RCMP, and there's a lot of partnership on those fronts, because ultimately, it's not just a Toronto problem. It's not just a local problem. It's happening right across the country, and there's these crime syndicates that are bringing all sorts of people into this life of crime, and then if they're arrested, then they bring more people in. So they need to be they need to be cut off. But the harder it is to actually make money off this, whether you are shipping them out or you're selling parts on Kijiji, it'll be less attractive for these syndicates to actually do the work that they're doing.
I have time for one more question, gentlemen.
Well, can I ask two really quick questions?
Sure.
Okay, this is really local to me near Yonge and Eglinton. First, Cowbell Lane is a treacherous one-block strip of cracked concrete and double-parked delivery vans. It's really difficult to be a pedestrian walking up there. Curious whether it's on the anything going to happen to fix that place. Second, Raccoon Park. You can see construction on the western side right now. What's that going to look like when it's all finished?
So yes, there's a plan for Cowbell Lane. There is money put aside from the developments that were along like 2221 and a few other ones in the past several years. So there is a plan to make significant improvements on that, and we'll have an update on the timing of that. But yes, I just want you to know that's more than on the radar. There's a plan for it. And as far as Raccoon Park goes, there is a public consultation happening right now. Like there's a survey happening right now. I don't know what the outcome's going to be because we haven't gone through the feedback. But it's going to be designed by the community, as we've always done.
Right now, it looked like it was about the steps are being taken to actually bring it to conclusion. But
Yeah. Well, remember, so I don't know if you're aware that the new Raccoon Park that exists today was temporarily closed because of some safety issues around the surfacing, so that's being redone. And then the expansion, there's a lot of ideas being bandied around, but we haven't made a decision yet because we're still getting the feedback. And if you have any ideas, send us too.
yeah, I got the survey.
Okay, please, yeah.
So last
Okay,
question,
so
gentlemen.
I'm the last question. I'm going to just ask a couple questions about everybody's favorite topic, construction. So I'm looking at Davisville and Yonge area specifically, but I know there's construction for the new center that's going there. But also there's a new condo going there, and they're going to be cutting off, I believe, some laneways as well for that construction. I'm just wondering, with regards to the construction, how is it organized? Because it seems to be something that's centered in one area and it's all impacted and it's just ongoing. And then the second question about construction is I hear about construction companies getting access to do construction at all hours, not the normal hours that are being allowed, but on weekends and way into 11 o'clock at night. I'm at the condo building at Davisville in Mount Pleasant, and there was construction happening that was going on till 11 o'clock at night, really loud. I'm on the board there, but the residents are coming to me asking. So so I know this is a bit confusing, construction, organizing that in specific areas where there's more than one construction going on, and secondly, construction at all hours being approved by the board, I believe.
So
I hope I made sense with my questions.
I'll try to parse it out.
Thank you.
So first of all, I don't believe that the development industry should have a divine given right to occupy our sidewalks and our lanes for 2 to 3 years at a time. And thank you. They are public right-of-ways. They should be used for the public. And there will be exceptions where it's impossible to redevelop, and that can be on the table. But if it's just simply a little more expensive or inconvenient, that shouldn't just be sort of a carte blanche for them to do that. The noise bylaws for construction are 7 to 7 during Monday and Friday, 9 to 7 on Saturday, and none at all on Sunday, and that has not been changed. There are some public works that will go outside of those hours to expedite some of the road repairs and things like that. Is that what you're hearing, or is it a private
No, it was actually the
construction?
one, so I'm at Davisville, Mount Pleasant, it was in the next street over, I forget the name of the street.
Yeah,
And
on
they,
Merton?
yeah, and they, I believe it's Merton, but they were giving access to
Beloyal?
11 o'clock at night. And Beloyal, thank
On
you.
Beloyal?
Yeah, I don't even know my own neighborhood, isn't that terrible? Anyway, Beloyal, and they were giving access, so people can hear it in the courtyard in our building, the construction going to 11, and they were told that they were approved for it. So maybe there might be some miscommunication, but that was something that happened. And I believe it's cut short now, but I've been told that's going to be the norm. That's what we were told by the city.
No.
Okay, just to give you a heads up. Thank you.
No. No.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, we had people call 311. We did. Yeah. Thank you.
The only thing I'd have to. By the way, if you actually want to get the details of that exact one, email me and I'll get the answer for you. But there are the one thing I can think of is sometimes when there's concrete pours, because that they have to keep rotating and they have to keep working. So there are certain times where it is unavoidable. But no, the bylaws have not changed, and the noise bylaws remain.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
So we'll look into it.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Oh, okay. Jane Jane knows, so it is the concrete pour. My guess was right. Yeah. Yeah, and it just has to because concrete will harden if they don't keep going. But that's an exception. It's not the normal.
But they do. It is quite. I've heard from tenants in surrounding buildings in other parts of the area. It is quite loud.
Yeah.
Because you hear a constant humming and whirring into even 3 a.m.
Yeah, that's true. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to thank Councillors Matlow and Chernis Lynn. Give them a hand.
All right. My turn to say thank you, and very soon to say good night. John, excellent job. Thanks so much. Josh and Rachel, always good to have you with us. Thank you for being here. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming and for staying. We had plans to give away some books, and we had a little organizational failure there. I apologize for that, but here's our new plan. We're going to set up some sort of online raffle. And we have books from John Lawrence that we're going to give away. So look for that on our website. And with that, thank you all. And we'll see you next year.